The observation chamber hummed with contained energy. Every surface reflected the blue-white glow of the quantum projection hovering between the assembled delegates. Dr. Kaverstall, the consortium's most celebrated physicist, gestured through the holographic field with his primary manipulator, drawing equations that twisted through 3 dimensions. His scales gleamed beneath the chamber lights, reflecting confidence earned through 2 centuries of research. Queen Shivara watched from her elevated dais, her 6 guards positioned according to ancient protocol. She had seen countless demonstrations, heard theories that reshaped understanding itself. This moment should have been routine. The scientist was presenting his unified field theory to representatives from 47 species, a breakthrough meant to revolutionize travel through dimensional space. But Captain Vrainen, standing third from her left flank, noticed the human first. A young male, barely past the threshold of their species' maturity, sat among the diplomatic delegation from Earth. The boy's eyes tracked the equations with unsettling focus. His fingers twitched against his datapad, movements small enough that others might miss them. Vrain cataloged the behavior automatically. Tension in the shoulders, jaw set. The particular stillness that preceded action. The human delegation leader, Ambassador Chen, sat rigid. She had positioned herself at the aisle's edge, her body language suggesting she anticipated needing to move quickly. Vrain's training identified the pattern. The humans knew something. They were waiting. Dr. Kaverstall's voice resonated through the chamber's acoustic amplifiers. The harmonic constant bridges quantum uncertainty with macro-scale stability. Through this lens, dimensional barriers become predictable, navigable. We stand at the threshold of instantaneous transport across galactic distances. His manipulator swept through the final sequence. The equation assembled itself, beautiful and complex, a symphony of mathematical precision that drew appreciative murmurs from the assembled scientists. 3 Menthari scholars leaned forward, their neural crests flickering with excitement. A Gorvian researcher's breathing accelerated, her sensory tendrils extending toward the projection. The human boy stood. Silence spread like a pressure wave. Ambassador Chen's hand moved toward him, stopped. Queen Shivara's guards shifted subtly, their attention sharpening. Protocol dictated that observers remain seated during presentations. The boy's action violated established order without apparent awareness or concern. "Your equation's wrong." The words fell into the charged atmosphere. Simple. Declarative. Devastating in their certainty. Dr. Kaverstall stopped mid-gesture. For 3 seconds he remained frozen. Then his laugh erupted, genuine and full-throated. Other scientists joined him. The sound rolled through the chamber, relief mixing with amusement. A human child, perhaps 17 standard years, challenging mathematics that had consumed the brightest minds across multiple species for decades. But Vrain watched the boy's face. No embarrassment colored his expression. No retreat from his statement. The human stood in the sound of that laughter with the same stillness that preceded calculated action. The laughter died when the boy remained standing. Dr. Kaverstall's scales shifted through colors indicating dismissive condescension. "Young human, this theory has been reviewed by the consortium's finest minds. The mathematics are sound." "No." The boy gestured toward his datapad. "You've got a sign error in the 12th derivation. It propagates through every subsequent calculation." The scientist's crests flared. "Impossible. I have verified line 47. The harmonic integration across dimensional boundaries. You've treated it as a positive correlation, but quantum foam collapses create negative resonance in higher dimensions. Your test results only worked because you've never pushed the field strength beyond theoretical minimums." The chamber held absolute silence now. The boy spoke with technical precision that suggested deep understanding rather than superficial knowledge. Ambassador Chen remained motionless, but Vrain detected elevated stress in her breathing pattern. Whatever was happening, she'd known it might happen. Queen Shivara leaned forward slightly, her first movement since the presentation began. "Explain." The command carried weight that made even the senior delegates straighten. The boy met her gaze without flinching, though humans typically found direct eye contact with Kreshvar royalty overwhelming. "If I'm right," the boy said, his voice steady despite addressing the most powerful being in the chamber, "and you build the dimensional drive using these calculations, the first time someone activates it at full power, it won't open a portal. It'll create a cascading dimensional tear that could propagate across light years of space. Everything in its path would be pulled into dimensional chaos." Dr. Kaverstall's laugh had become something else. Not amusement, not dismissal, a sound that emerged from species-deep anxiety. "Your claims require evidence beyond—" "I have it." The boy raised his datapad. 3 separate simulation models using consortium baseline physics. All show the same result: catastrophic dimensional instability. I can walk you through every step. Queen Shivara's silence pressed down like atmosphere. Her guards recognized that particular quality of stillness. She was deciding something. Something significant, Captain Vrain, she said, her voice cutting through the tension like focused energy. No one enters or leaves until this matter resolves. The command activated protocols that hadn't been invoked in decades, the doors sealed with heavy finality. The assembled delegates looked at each other, confusion mixing with dawning concern. They were locked in with either a breakthrough that challenged everything or a disaster waiting to unfold. The boy stood in that locked chamber, datapad extended, surrounded by the galaxy's most brilliant minds. And Vrain, watching him with the trained eye of someone who had defended royalty through assassination attempts and diplomatic crises, recognized something crucial. The human wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. The slight tremor in his hands suggested fear, not arrogance. He believed every word he'd said, and he'd spoken anyway, knowing the reaction it would cause. Queen Shivara descended from her dais, each step deliberate. The assembled delegates parted. She'd crossed half the distance to the human boy before anyone fully processed that she'd moved at all. When she stopped, her presence filled the space around him, overwhelming in its focused attention. "Show me," she said. Dr. Coverstall pushed through the crowd, his composure fracturing. "Your Majesty, this is unnecessary. The boy is mistaken." "I have spent..." Captain Vrain. The Queen didn't raise her voice or turn her attention from the boy. "If the scientist speaks again without permission, remove him from the chamber." Vrain moved closer to Dr. Vernon Coverstall, one hand resting lightly near her plasma disruptor. The message was clear. The physicist's scales rippled through colors indicating profound distress, but he fell silent. The boy tapped his datapad. The projection system responded, recognizing his input codes. The beautiful equation that Dr. Coverstall had assembled flickered, then transformed. The boy's fingers moved through the holographic field, isolating specific elements. His movements showed familiarity with mathematical notation that typically required years of specialized training to master. "Here." He highlighted a section deep in the derivation chain. "The dimensional harmonic constant. You're treating it as a scalar value, but it's actually a tensor that changes sign based on the local curvature of dimensional space. When you integrate across boundaries, this matters." Ambassador Chen finally spoke, her voice carefully controlled.
"Marcus Sullivan is a prodigy in theoretical physics.
He's completed graduate-level coursework in quantum mechanics and dimensional topology. When we received the specifications for Dr. Coverstall's theory, we asked him to review them. What he found concerned us enough that we requested this formal presentation." Queen Shivara's attention remained on the boy, Marcus. "Continue." Marcus expanded the equation, rebuilding it from the highlighted section outward. His fingers moved with increasing confidence now, the initial nervousness fading as he entered familiar territory. "If you correct the sign and treat the constant as a tensor, the mathematics still work at low power. The dimensional portal forms correctly at theoretical minimums because the negative resonance stays below threshold. But as power increases, the resonance amplifies exponentially rather than linearly." He gestured, and a simulation spun into existence beside the equation. A dimensional portal opened, stable and controlled. Then the power level increased. The portal's edges began to flutter. Increase again, and the flutter became violent oscillation. At maximum theoretical power, the portal didn't stabilize. It expanded rapidly, its edges tearing through the fabric of dimensional space like paper. The simulation showed the tear propagating faster than light, consuming everything in its path. Stars vanished into the expanding chaos. Planets simply ceased to exist. The destruction radiated outward in a sphere that encompassed parsecs. Then it all collapsed inward, creating a dimensional void that would take centuries to stabilize. The chamber watched in absolute silence. Coverstall's scales had gone pale gray. His voice emerged barely above a whisper. That cannot be correct. I verified the mathematics. Centuries of established theory support. You assumed." Marcus's interruption was soft but devastating. "You assumed that dimensional harmonics behaved like standard quantum correlations, because that's what earlier, smaller-scale experiments suggested. But dimensional space doesn't scale linearly. At low energy levels, the approximation holds. At the power levels needed for practical travel, it breaks catastrophically." Queen Shivara turned to her chief science advisor, a Menthari whose neural crest had been flickering with increasing agitation throughout the demonstration. Verify his mathematics. The Menthari approached the projection, her four eyes scanning the equations rapidly. Her crest flickered in patterns that indicated intensive calculation. Menthari could perform complex mathematics internally, their neural architecture optimized for such processing. The chamber waited as she worked through the derivations, checking each step against established theory. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of reluctant truth. The human's corrections are mathematically sound. If his interpretation of dimensional harmonic behavior is accurate, then his predictions follow logically. If Dr. Kaverstal seized on the word, his interpretation is untested. Theory, not reality. My calculations are based on decades of experimental data. Your experimental data. Marcus's datapad displayed a new set of information. Every test you ran kept power levels below 16% of maximum theoretical output. You were working cautiously, which is smart for initial experiments. But cautious testing means you never approach the threshold where the negative resonance effect becomes dominant. Vrain watched the scientist's body language collapse. The proud scales went flat. The primary manipulator, which had gestured so confidently through the presentation, fell to his side. A being confronting the possibility that his life's work might not just be wrong, but potentially catastrophic. Ambassador Chen stood. We didn't come here to embarrass anyone, but when Marcus showed us what he'd found, we couldn't stay silent. If even one ship attempted travel at full power using these calculations, the consequences could be devastating. Queen Shivara returned to her dais, her movement deliberate and controlled, her guards reformed around her automatically. She settled into her seat, and Vrain recognized the particular stillness that meant the Queen was thinking through implications several layers deep. This requires verification beyond mathematical proof. The Queen's voice carried absolute authority. But we cannot risk experimental testing if the human's theory is correct. Captain Vrain, how long would it take to establish a secure testing facility in uninhabited deep space? Vrain calculated quickly. 3 weeks to reach the designated coordinates. Another week to establish proper shielding and monitoring equipment, minimal risk to inhabited systems. Make it happen. The Queen turned her attention back to Marcus. You will accompany the testing expedition. If your mathematics are correct, you will help develop the proper corrections. If you are wrong, you will witness that truth directly. Marcus's face showed multiple emotions in rapid succession. Fear, determination, something like resignation. He nodded. Yes, Your Majesty. Dr. Kaverstal stood isolated in the center of the chamber, surrounded by colleagues who now looked at him with uncertainty rather than admiration. The Queen's next words offered him a lifeline wrapped in obligation. Doctor, you will also join the expedition. Your expertise is invaluable, regardless of this theory's ultimate validity. We seek truth, not blame. The scientist's scales shifted through colors indicating complex emotional states. Finally, they settled on something approaching humble acceptance. As you command, Your Majesty. The chamber unsealed. Delegates began filing out, their conversations hushed and urgent. The implications were spreading. If a human teenager had found a fatal flaw in work that had passed review by the consortium's finest minds, what else might have been missed? How many other theories, technologies, or fundamental assumptions might contain similar hidden dangers? Ambassador Chen approached Marcus, her hand settling on his shoulder. Vrain noted the protective gesture, the way the ambassador positioned herself between the boy and the departing scientists. Some of them stared at Marcus with hostility, their pride wounded by public correction. Others looked at him with a mixture of respect and wariness, reassessing their understanding of human capability. Queen Shivara remained seated as the chamber emptied. Vrain maintained position, watching the flow of bodies, categorizing threat levels automatically. When only the royal guard, the Queen, and the human delegation remained, the Queen spoke again. Ambassador, how many others like him does Earth have? Chen considered the question carefully. Prodigies exist in every generation. Marcus is exceptional even among them, but he's not unique. Our species produces individuals with extraordinary capacity for intuitive leaps in understanding. We've learned to identify and nurture such talents. Intuitive leaps. The Queen's repetition carried weight. The Menthari required decades to develop such capability. Their neural architecture must be trained extensively before they achieve the integration necessary for advanced mathematical intuition. Humans develop differently, Chen acknowledged. Some show advanced capability early. Others never develop it at all. Our variation is extreme compared to many species. Queen Shivara rose from her dais, descending again. She approached Marcus directly, studying him with the intensity that made even veteran diplomats uncomfortable. The boy met her gaze, though tension showed in his rigid posture. "You spoke despite knowing the reaction it would cause," the Queen said. "Why?" Marcus's answer came without hesitation. "A lot of people. Maybe entire worlds, if the dimensional tier propagated far enough. I didn't want to embarrass anyone, but I couldn't just not say anything." "You prioritized potential lives over social harmony." The Queen's tone was unreadable. "Over your own comfort and safety." "This is consistent human behavior?" Chen answered when Marcus hesitated. "Among our better qualities, yes. Humans have a tendency toward protective action, even at personal cost. It's caused problems, but it's also one of our defining characteristics." The Queen returned to her dais but didn't sit. "The expedition will depart in 3 days. Dr. Kaverstal will have that time to review his work with fresh understanding. Marcus Sullivan will have that time to prepare his comprehensive analysis. Captain Vrain, you will command the security detail." Vrain straightened at the unexpected assignment. "Your Majesty, my place is at your side. Your place is where I assign it. I am not sending a human child into deep space with angry scientists without protection, I trust absolutely." The Queen's tone brooked no argument. "Lieutenant Shar will assume your duties here. The assignment carried implications beyond simple security work." The Queen was making a statement. Whatever happened with the dimensional theory, humans had demonstrated capability that required respect and attention. Vrain would observe, report, and ensure that respect translated into appropriate treatment. "Understood, Your Majesty." The human delegation departed under Vrain's watchful observation. Marcus walked with controlled steps, the confidence he'd shown during the presentation draining now that the immediate crisis had passed. His hands shook slightly. Ambassador Chen kept close, her presence steady and protective. Vrain's assessment shifted. The humans hadn't come seeking advantage or recognition. They'd come carrying an unwanted burden, knowing the disruption it would cause, speaking anyway because silence felt like complicity in potential disaster. It was a moral calculus that prioritized unknown lives over immediate social peace. Curious behavior. Admirable, perhaps, but carrying its own complications. Queen Shivara waited until the chamber emptied completely before speaking again. "Your assessment, Captain?" The Queen valued honest analysis over comfortable platitudes. The boy believes his own conclusions completely. "No deception detected. The ambassador's stress pattern suggests genuine concern rather than political maneuvering. If this is a calculated move, it's executed with precision beyond my ability to detect." But humans are new to the consortium. Their behavioral patterns don't align with established profiles. What appears genuine might simply be unfamiliar manipulation. I cannot rule out the possibility, which is why you're going." The Queen settled into her seat fully now, her posture relaxing slightly in the empty chamber. 3 weeks in close quarters. You'll know their truth by the time we reach the testing coordinates. And if the boy is wrong, then we learn that human intuition, however impressive, has limits. That lesson carries value as well. The Queen's eyes focused on the spot where Marcus had stood. "But Captain, consider this. Dr. Kaverstal is brilliant by any measure. His work has advanced our understanding immensely. Yet he missed something a human child found." "Pride," Vrain suggested. "Verification bias? Scientists seeing what they expected to see. Perhaps. Or perhaps humans perceive dimensional mathematics differently. Their neural architecture evolved in isolation, without contact with consortium teaching methods. They approach these problems from entirely novel perspectives." The Queen paused, her stillness indicating deep consideration. "Evolution favors adaptation. Species that survive to reach spacefaring capability do so by developing unique advantages. We are learning what humanity's advantages might be." The implications settled into Vrain's awareness. If humans could routinely identify problems that escaped conventional analysis, they became invaluable for reviewing critical systems. But such capability also made them potentially threatening to established order. Species prided themselves on their achievements. Having those achievements questioned by newcomers would generate resentment. "The expedition will be dangerous," Vrain said. "Not from testing failures. From scientists whose life's work has been challenged by a child. Yes." The Queen's agreement was matter of fact. "Which is why you're going, Captain. Keep him alive, keep him safe, and bring me the truth about whether humanity sees what we cannot." The next 3 days passed in controlled chaos. Dr. Kaverstal sequestered himself with his mathematics, his research team working frantically to verify Marcus's corrections. Initial reports suggested the boy's math was holding under scrutiny, which only intensified the urgency. The consortium had been days away from authorizing construction of dimensional drives based on the flawed theory. Marcus spent his time with a team of human physicists who'd arrived on emergency transport bringing additional analysis and supporting evidence. Ambassador Chen coordinated with consortium officials, managing the diplomatic fallout while maintaining pressure for thorough investigation. Vrain used the time to study human behavior patterns, reviewing documentation about their species' development. The files painted a picture of remarkable adaptability and disturbing aggression. Humans had reached space while still capable of profound violence toward their own kind. They'd developed weapons capable of rendering their homeworld uninhabitable while simultaneously reaching for the stars. Contradictory species. Protective of innocent lives, yet capable of systematic destruction. Brilliant in intuitive leaps, yet prone to catastrophic errors in judgment. The contradiction itself might be their defining characteristic. The expedition vessel Vaishar's Pride departed on schedule. Vrain commanded a security detail of 12, chosen for their experience and discipline. The science team numbered 23, representing 7 species, all volunteers willing to risk the potential danger of testing flawed dimensional theory. Dr. Kavreshtal led them, his demeanor noticeably subdued compared to his earlier confidence. Marcus traveled with 2 human scientists as support, Dr. Sarah Chen, his mentor and no relation to the ambassador, and Dr. Robert Martinez, a specialist in dimensional topology who'd helped verify Marcus's initial findings. Both humans maintained professional courtesy toward the other scientists, but Vrain detected underlying tension in the group dynamics. The journey to the testing coordinates took 20 days. Vrain observed the human delegation carefully, cataloging their behavior patterns against consortium norms. Marcus spent most of his time working through simulations, refining his mathematical models, preparing detailed presentations about the corrections needed to stabilize dimensional travel at higher power levels. Sarah Chen acted as buffer between Marcus and the rest of the science team. Her diplomatic skill kept interactions professional, diffusing tension before it escalated. Dr. Martinez served as technical translator, helping bridge the gap between human intuitive mathematics and the more formal consortium approaches. On the 14th day, Dr. Kaverstal requested a private meeting with Marcus. Vrain attended, standing observer against the wall of the small conference room. The physicist's scales showed colors indicating humility and uncertainty, a dramatic shift from his earlier bearing. "I've spent 2 weeks reviewing your corrections," Dr. Kaverstal said, his voice stripped of pride. "You were correct. The sign error, the tensor treatment of the harmonic constant, all of it. My testing protocols never approached the power levels where the effect would become apparent." Marcus sat across the table, his posture cautious. "I didn't want to be right." "I really didn't. I was hoping I'd made the mistake." "Why?" The question seemed to surprise the boy. "Because your work is amazing. The dimensional field theory itself is brilliant. I just found a place where the math didn't match reality." "I wasn't trying to tear down everything you'd built. Dr. Kuss is happy to say..." Kaverstal's scales shifted through complex patterns. "My species values achievement, legacy, contributions that outlive us. To have my greatest work revealed as potentially catastrophic, I wanted to hate you. Part of me still does." Vrain's hand moved subtly closer to her weapon, but Marcus didn't react with fear. He leaned forward slightly, his expression earnest. "I understand. If someone told me I'd been wrong about something I'd spent my whole life working on, I'd be angry too. But we can fix it. The theory is solid. We just need to account for the higher order effects. Your work isn't destroyed. It's being corrected by a child, by someone who happened to see something from a different angle." Marcus's voice carried gentle insistence. "My species has a saying, 2 heads are better than 1. More perspectives mean fewer blind spots. You built something incredible. I just helped make it safer." The physicist sat silently for long moments. When he finally spoke again, his tone had shifted subtly. "Your species sees mathematics differently than ours. We approach it as formal logic, building step by careful step. You seem to leap across gaps, finding conclusions through intuition." "Sometimes," Marcus acknowledged. "But we still have to show our work. Intuition gets you to the answer, but proof makes it real. I couldn't just say your equation was wrong. I had to demonstrate why. Show the error, prove the consequences. Intuition without rigor is just guessing. Dr. Kavreshtal gestured at the datapad lying on the table between them. Will you collaborate with me on the corrected theory, not as critic and creator, but as partners ensuring this technology serves rather than destroys? Marcus's expression showed surprise and something like relief. Yes.
Absolutely.
Brain filed the interaction in her ongoing assessment. The physicist's ability to move past wounded pride toward productive collaboration suggested emotional maturity and commitment to truth over ego. Marcus's lack of triumphalism, his evident discomfort with having been correct, aligned with the protective morality Ambassador Chen had described. The pattern held across the journey. Vrain watched Marcus interact with the science team, noting how he deflected personal credit toward collaborative understanding, how he treated Dr. Kavreshtal's insights with respect, building on them rather than dismissing them. How he worked late reviewing simulations, his dedication suggesting genuine concern about getting the corrections right. Human behavior, contradictory, protective, driven by moral imperatives that sometimes conflicted with immediate self-interest. The testing coordinates sat in deep interstellar space, light years from the nearest inhabited system. Veshar's Pride established position, deployed monitoring equipment in a sphere around the testing zone, and began final preparations. The dimensional drive prototype sat in a reinforced containment field, ready for activation at increasing power levels. The science team reviewed the testing protocol repeatedly. They would activate the drive at minimum power, confirming portal formation. Then they'd increase power in 10% increments, monitoring dimensional stability at each level. If Marcus's theory was correct, they'd see the instability begin around 16% power and accelerate rapidly toward catastrophic levels beyond 40%. If he was wrong, they'd see stable portal formation across the full power range. The distinction mattered profoundly. Careers, funding, entire research directions hinged on the outcome. The first test began. The dimensional drive activated at minimum power, humming with contained energy. Space twisted, folded, and a portal irised open in the containment field. Stable. Controlled. Perfect. Kavreshtal's scales showed tentative relief. Marcus watched the readings with tense focus. Power increased to 10%. The portal remained stable, its edges holding firm against dimensional stress. Monitoring equipment showed quantum patterns matching theoretical predictions. 15%, still stable, though some minor fluctuations appeared in the harmonic resonance readings. Nothing concerning. Within acceptable parameters. Marcus's tension increased. Vrain noted his elevated breathing, the way his hands gripped the edge of the control panel. 16%, announced the Menthari technician operating the controls. The portal's edges rippled. Subtle, barely detectable, but present. The harmonic readings showed increased variation. Not dangerous yet, but trending toward instability. The fluctuation is minor, Dr. Kavreshtal said. His voice carried hope more than certainty. Could be equipment sensitivity. 17%, the technician said. The ripple intensified. The portal's perfect circle deformed slightly, its edges developing irregular oscillations. Quantum readings showed resonance patterns beginning to diverge from theoretical predictions. Marcus's voice emerged quiet but firm. There. That's where the negative resonance starts becoming apparent. At 20%, it'll be obvious. At 30%, it'll be dangerous. At 40%, catastrophic. Continued to 20%, Dr. Kavreshtal ordered. His voice was steady, but his scales showed conflicting colors. Hope and dread fighting for dominance. The technician complied. Power increased incrementally. 18%. 19, 20. The portal destabilized visibly. The edges whipped violently, tearing at the fabric of dimensional space. Alarms triggered across multiple monitoring systems. Quantum resonance readings spiked into dangerous territory. The containment field strained against mounting stress. Shut it down, Dr. Kavreshtal commanded. The technician immediately reversed power, bringing the drive offline. The portal collapsed inward, space snapping back into normal configuration. The command center sat in stunned silence. He was right, someone said. A statement of fact carrying the weight of paradigm shift. The human child was right. Dr. Kavreshtal turned to face Marcus. His scales showed complete defeat, pride finally surrendering to truth. At higher power levels, your predictions suggest total systemic failure? Yes. Marcus's voice was gentle. But we can fix it. With the corrected mathematics, accounting for the tensor behavior of the harmonic constant, we can compensate for the negative resonance. The portal will stabilize across the full power range. Your theory isn't broken, it just needed refinement. Refinement. The physicist repeated the word like a lifeline. We can test that? We should, Marcus said. But carefully, incrementally, making sure each level holds stable before pushing higher. It'll take time. Dr. Kaverstall looked at the science team, then back to Marcus. Something shifted in his posture, his bearing. Vrain recognized the moment when resistance gave way to acceptance, when ego yielded to reality. The physicist extended his primary manipulator in the formal gesture of equal greeting. Then we work together. Your intuition paired with established methodology. Human insight combined with consortium rigor. We build something stronger than either could achieve alone. Marcus reached out, accepting the gesture. His hand looked small against the physicist's manipulator, but the contact was real, meaningful. A bridge across species lines, built on shared commitment to truth. The testing continued for 8 more days. The team implemented Marcus's corrections, recalibrating the dimensional drive to account for the tensor behavior of harmonic constants. Each power level required careful adjustment, precise tuning to maintain stability against negative resonance effects. At 30% power, the corrected drive formed a stable portal. 40%, still stable. 50%, holding firm. Each successful test validated the human's mathematics while simultaneously proving that Dr. Kaverstall's foundational theory remained sound. By the end of testing, they'd achieved stable portal formation at 80% power, well beyond any previous attempt. The technology wasn't destroyed. It was enhanced, refined, made safe through collaboration between different ways of thinking. Vrain watched the science team's dynamics shift across those 8 days. Initial resentment toward Marcus transformed into respect. Resistance gave way to curiosity about human mathematical approaches. Several scientists began asking Marcus to review their own work, seeking his unique perspective on problems they'd struggled with. The boy responded with genuine enthusiasm, never claiming superior understanding but offering observations from angles others hadn't considered. His youth became advantage rather than limitation. He hadn't been trained into established patterns, so he saw possibilities that conventional thinking missed. On the journey back to consortium space, Brain compiled her report for Queen Shivara. The assessment evolved beyond simple security observations into analysis of human cognitive patterns, their potential contributions to broader consortium scientific efforts. The final section addressed risk assessment. Humans were protective, intuitive, prone to moral action that disrupted social harmony. They challenged established authority when they perceived danger, prioritizing potential lives over immediate comfort. Such behavior could destabilize careful diplomatic balance. But the alternative was missing crucial insights, overlooking fatal flaws, building technologies on assumptions that killed when pushed beyond comfortable limits. The humans had demonstrated value that outweighed their disruption. Vesher's Pride docked at the consortium's primary station 3 weeks after leaving the testing coordinates. Ambassador Chen waited at the arrival gate, her expression showing careful control over evident relief. Queen Shivara herself stood beside the ambassador, an unprecedented gesture that drew attention from every being in the docking facility. Marcus descended the ramp first, his steps uncertain. Behind him, Dr. Kaverstall followed, his scales showing colors indicating satisfaction and renewed purpose. The rest of the science team emerged in a group, their body language suggesting unity rather than division. Queen Shivara approached Marcus directly, her guards arraying themselves around her in formal pattern. The entire docking facility fell silent. Such attention from royalty marked moments of historical significance. "Your mathematics were proven correct," the Queen said. Her voice carried through the silent space. "Dr. Kaverstall's theory remains valid, enhanced by your corrections. The consortium owes you debt for preventing potentially catastrophic implementation of flawed technology." Marcus looked uncomfortable with the attention, but he met the Queen's gaze. "I just did what anyone should do. I saw a problem and said something. You disrupted established order, challenged recognized authority, risked social censure and potential harm to yourself. The Queen's statement enumerated facts. Yet you acted anyway, because silence felt like complicity in potential death. This is characteristic human behavior?" Ambassador Chen answered. "Among our better impulses, yes. We're not perfect. We make mistakes, but when we see danger, we tend toward intervention rather than passivity." "Dangerous tendency," the Queen said. also valuable. Captain Vrain's report suggests that human cognitive patterns provide perspectives that complement existing consortium approaches. Different neural architectures produce different ways of perceiving problems. She turned to address the assembled crowd, her voice amplified through the station's communication system. The consortium was built on the principle that diversity of thought strengthens all. We incorporate species because their unique capabilities add to our collective understanding. Humans have demonstrated such unique capability. They see what we miss, challenge what we assume, protect who we might overlook. The Queen returned her attention to Marcus. The Consortium Science Council would like to establish formal collaboration with your species. We will send scientists to learn your educational methods, understand how you develop intuitive mathematical capability. In exchange, you will send observers like yourself to review critical systems, challenge our assumptions, help us see our own blind spots. You want humans to question everything? Marcus's tone suggested he wasn't sure whether that was actually a good idea. We want humans to question what needs questioning, to see what we miss, to care about potential lives enough to speak uncomfortable truths. The Queen gestured toward Dr. Kaverstal. We want collaborative development between different ways of thinking, neither superior, neither inferior, complementary. Dr. Kaverstal stepped forward. His scales showed colors indicating formal respect. The corrected dimensional drive theory will be published under joint authorship. Kaverstal and Sullivan. Consortium expertise paired with human intuition. The first of many such collaborations. The assembled crowd murmured, processing implications. Humans weren't just being welcomed into the consortium. They were being integrated at fundamental levels of scientific development. Their perspectives would shape future technologies, inform critical decisions, challenge comfortable assumptions. Some beings in the crowd showed signs of unease. Change always generated resistance. But others, especially younger scientists, displayed interest and excitement. New perspectives meant new possibilities. Different ways of thinking could unlock problems that had remained unsolvable for generations. Vrain stood among the Queen's guards, watching patterns develop in crowd dynamics. The humans had arrived as newcomers seeking recognition. They were leaving as partners in the consortium's ongoing evolution. The transition had required disruption, uncomfortable truth, wounded pride yielding to demonstrated capability. But the alternative had been catastrophe, unknown lives saved by a teenager willing to speak truth to power. Ambassador Chen approached the Queen, her posture showing formal respect. Your Majesty, Earth is honored by this proposal. We accept the collaborative framework. We'll identify additional observers, scientists who can contribute unique perspectives while learning from consortium expertise.
One condition, the Queen said.
The humans you send must be protected. Captain Vrain will establish security protocols ensuring their safety as they work. Some will resent their questions. Some will react poorly to challenge. Your people take risks when they speak. We will protect them as they do. Marcus looked surprised. You're assigning security because we point out problems? We're assigning security because you point out problems that others miss, and some beings respond poorly to being wrong. The Queen's tone carried absolute certainty. You have demonstrated that your species values truth over comfort. We will demonstrate that the consortium values such courage enough to protect it. The formal ceremony concluded. The crowd dispersed slowly, conversations buzzing with debate about the implications. Marcus returned to Ambassador Chen's custody, his relief at being out of the spotlight evident. Dr. Kavristal departed with his research team, already discussing plans for the first collaborative research facility. Queen Shivara remained at the docking facility longer than protocol required, watching the humans depart. Vrain stood at her right hand, awaiting orders or insight. Your assessment, Captain? Vrain considered the question carefully. Humans will cause disruption. Their tendency toward protective intervention conflicts with social stability, but their capacity to see beyond established patterns is genuine. We would be foolish to ignore such capabilities simply because it creates discomfort. And the boy specifically? Marcus Sullivan believes deeply in preventing harm. That moral drive overrides social pressure and self-interest. He'll speak when he sees danger, regardless of consequences. Vrain paused, choosing words carefully. Such individuals either change their societies or are crushed by them. The consortium will ensure the former rather than the latter. The Queen turned from the viewport, her decision made. Humans represent evolution in thought patterns. We adapt to include them, or we stagnate in comfortable assumptions. History favors adaptation. The Queen departed, her guards flowing around her in practiced formation. Vrain remained briefly, processing the implications of what had occurred. A human teenager had challenged the consortium's finest scientist and been proven correct. The response had been integration rather than rejection, collaboration rather than dismissal. The consortium was changing. Including humans meant accepting their disruptive tendency to question authority, challenge assumptions, prioritize unknown lives over immediate comfort. Such change would generate resistance, conflict, probably violence from those who valued stability over truth, but the alternative was missing fatal flaws, building on dangerous assumptions, losing lives that could have been saved if someone had been willing to speak. Vrain returned to her duties, her report filed, her observations documented. Marcus Sullivan would return to Earth, continue his education, grow into whatever the universe required him to become. Dr. Kaverstal would rebuild his life's work, enhanced rather than destroyed by the corrections. The consortium would navigate the complicated integration of a species that saw the universe differently. And somewhere, in laboratories and research stations across the galaxy, other humans would begin reviewing critical systems, asking uncomfortable questions, challenging comfortable assumptions, seeing what others missed. The equation had been wrong. The teenager had said so, and the galaxy had listened. Because sometimes survival required accepting truth from unexpected sources. Sometimes wisdom came from those too young to know they should stay silent. Sometimes the most dangerous thing was comfort with assumptions that hadn't been tested against reality. The dimensional drive would work now, safe and stable across its full power range. Ships would travel vast distances without tearing holes in space. Lives would continue, unaware they'd been saved by a human who cared more about strangers dying than social harmony. The consortium had learned something valuable, not just about mathematics or dimensional physics. About the courage required to speak truth to power, about the moral weight of comfortable silence, about the value of perspectives that hadn't been shaped by established teaching. Humanity had arrived among the stars. Disruptive, protective, brilliant in unexpected ways, prone to uncomfortable questions and moral imperatives that challenged authority, exactly what the consortium needed, even if they hadn't known to ask for it. The story of Marcus Sullivan and the flawed equation would spread across the galaxy. In research facilities, young scientists would hear it and learn that questions mattered more than comfort. In diplomatic chambers, ambassadors would reference it when discussing the value of challenging assumptions. In guard training facilities, Rain's report would become case study in protecting those who spoke truth regardless of cost. And on Earth, a teenager would return to his studies carrying the weight of lives saved in the knowledge that speaking had mattered, that his voice, young and uncertain as it was, had prevented catastrophe, that sometimes being right mattered more than being comfortable. The equation had been wrong. The teen had said so. The scientist had laughed. The Queen had watched. The truth had emerged. The galaxy had changed, and in the end, that was exactly how it should have been.